Wanting to take on the iconic Narrows hike in Zion National Park while you're there? We're gonna talk about it. Hey there, I'm Alex from Alex on the Map, and I have been to over 30 national parks, including Zion. To be honest, when we were going to take on this hike while we were there, I was not sure that it would be as cool as people said it was. I had seen it all over social media and had heard so much about it. I definitely thought it was going to be kind of overrated. I mean, how much fun can walking in water be, really? It actually ended up being one of the most unique things I've ever done in a national park, and I would highly recommend it if you are heading to Zion and it's of interest to you. Of course, there are some unique challenges that come with hiking the Narrows, including the fact that you will be hiking in some pretty high water. This means that you might have to have a whole new set of gear, and conditions change quite often for this hike, so that will need to be on your radar as well. We're gonna go over all of that in this video, but first, a quick tip. I totally recommend setting aside an entire day to do this hike. Even if you aren't planning on doing the full length, it just does take up a lot of time, and you are in the farthest reaches of the park, so it can be a little bit longer to get to and a little bit longer to get back. Plus, you might just be tired from hiking through so much water. Another thing I'm going to mention before we get started is this video is about hiking the Narrows as a day hike. There is also the opportunity to hike it as a backpacking trip from the top to bottom, but we're going to be talking about hiking from the bottom to the top, which does not require a permit. Alright, here are some quick stats to go over for this hike. The total distance is 8.9 miles if you do the full hike. I would say it's hard because you are wading through water and there is a slight elevation gain on the way. The total elevation gain is about 695 feet, and I would budget for at least 5.5 to 6 hours if you plan on doing the full thing. Alright, let's chat a bit about how to do this hike from the bottom to the top. Before you get started, you're going to want to make the decision of whether or not you're going to invest in some new gear before you head out. Daniel and I hiked this in October, so the water was quite warm and low during this time. We chose not to rent neoprene booties, a wetsuit, and a walking stick, which you can from several outfitters in the Springdale area. I recommend checking out Zion Guru and Zion Outfitter. They are the ones that will supply you with what you need if you want the full paraphernalia to get through the Narrows. If you do choose to rent everything, it's about $30 a day. I would definitely recommend doing this in the colder months because it can get quite chilly in the Virgin River during that time. We didn't need the whole enchilada because of the time we were visiting, but even then in my chacos and shorts I was quite cold in the water, so keeping that in mind too if you don't adjust well to colder temperatures in water. One thing I do recommend you bring with you no matter what is some sort of pole or walking stick to keep yourself upright. Because you have a current and rocks are slippery, it can be really easy just to fall over without one. To get to the trailhead, you're going to want to pop on the Zion National Park shuttle and take it to the last stop at the Temple of Sinawava. From there, you're going to have a short walk on the riverside walk before you head into the water and get wet. It does take some time to get used to the slippery rocks and the current, but once you've kind of found your rhythm, it gets a lot easier to continue your walk through the canyon. You'll notice that it starts fairly wide, but then it starts coming in closer and closer, and that's when you start to see the really cool features on the side of the canyon walls. About 2 miles in, you're going to reach the most famous section of the hike, Wall Street. Wall Street is definitely the most dramatic section of the entire hike. The canyon walls go up to about 1,500 feet above you, and there's some really unique waterfalls and everything on the sides. About 2.5 miles in, you're going to reach the Orderville Canyon Junction. This is where a lot of hikers choose to stop and head back just because it can be really tiring wading through water for 2.5 miles. But if you are up for it and you feel good, I would continue on to go a little bit further into Wall Street because it's definitely worth it. You're also going to notice that the crowds of people that want to be on this hike definitely thin out. This is where the best scenery is and where you're going to get some of the best photos because you're just not going to have a ton of other people in the pictures. What I love about the Narrows is it's kind of a choose your own adventure. If you want to continue on till you reach about not quite 5 miles in, you'll hit to Big Spring. or if you'd like to turn back at any point, you can. Daniel and I did manage to make it to Big Spring, and we sat and had our lunch in the really late afternoon and just enjoyed being in the canyon without a ton of other people there. But it is tiring. It was our full day thing. The Narrows was all we did that day. At this point, unless you have a permit, you will need to turn around and head back the way you came. I found the return trip a little bit easier because you're not fighting the current so much, and you have a rhythm going down at that point, so you know how to walk through the water. Even still, I'm a klutz, and I did manage to fall and bruise my leg quite a bit, so just keeping that in mind that it's never easy. At no point does it get really easier. We started our hike later in the day at 12 p.m. and got back around 5:30 to 6 p.m. to catch one of the last shuttles. Honestly, I would start this way earlier than we did just because that gives you more time to enjoy and you won't feel so rushed. Also, afternoon thunderstorms are a big thing in Zion, and you have to be very careful because this is a slot canyon. Anytime rain is in the forecast, it's probably not a good idea to hike this hike anyway. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Are you struggling on planning your national park trip? Let's face it, between accommodations, figuring out the reservation system, and a lot more, it's just overwhelming planning your national park trip sometimes. This can cost you a lot of time and money just figuring out your itinerary. If you're looking for some help planning your trip, I offer a custom national park itinerary service that walks you through day by day what you need to know before you go. This itinerary will save you a lot of time and money and allows you to get to the park and actually enjoy your trip instead of worrying about all the details. I plan hundreds of national park trips for clients, which has helped them enjoy their whole experience a lot more. So what does one of these custom itineraries include? You can expect reservation information if needed, suggestions on where to stay, what to eat, and what to do, and tips and recommendations for your specific park. You'll love the itinerary I plan for you, or you get your money back. Here are some testimonials from some of my clients. Alex was very responsive to my request for assistance in planning our upcoming trip to Glacier National Park. We were unfamiliar with the park, and it was helpful to get specific recommendations of where to stay, eat, and what to do while we're out there to make the most of our vacation from Barbara. Alex was more than prompt in responding to my request for an itinerary. Her selections fit perfectly with the criteria I requested. She's been great about following up and making sure that our needs are met. From Samantha. If you're interested in this, I offer a 15-minute consultation call for free where you can tell me about your concerns for your national park trip, and I can give you more information on how I can help you. You can find that out in the description below and book your call there. Here are some tips I found helpful for hiking the Narrows. First, I would highly recommend that you check weather conditions daily and you check in with a park ranger if you're unsure. Conditions change in the canyon a lot, especially during the monsoon season in the fall, and during other times of year there might be some bacteria blooms and you definitely don't want to be hiking in that water. Plus, sometimes the water levels are just very high, and that's not a good idea, especially if you're hiking in chest high water. I would definitely recommend checking out the Zion National Park website and the trail conditions page before you plan on hiking this hike at all. If you want to check that out, I have a link to that in the blog post on this topic below. My second recommendation would be to hike in the morning, so don't do what we did. Not only does this make the shuttle experience a lot better because there are likely to be fewer people on it, but it's not fun hiking through a ton of water and trying to hike through a ton of people as well. So this makes it a little bit better when you want to avoid the crowds. Plus, then you don't have to worry about those afternoon thunderstorms so much. Another major thing to consider is the time of year you're hiking. If you are planning on renting that extra gear, knowing what time of year you're planning on visiting can make a huge difference in that. If you are hiking in the heat of the summer, it might not be totally necessary. But if you're hiking in the cooler months and that water level is high, then a wetsuit, neoprene booties, and all the stuff is going to be really needed. That's another thing you can always ask a park ranger about too, because they'll be happy to let you know what the temperature of the water is like. I would definitely recommend taking frequent breaks too. You're gonna burn a lot more energy hiking through water than you would normally. There are opportunities where you are out of the water and you are standing on land that I would recommend you sit down, have a snack, and drink a lot of water and rest. Also, remember that you can turn back at any time you would like if you're starting to feel tired. Alright, here are some common FAQs I get about hiking the Narrows. Do I need a permit to hike the Narrows bottom to top? No, as mentioned before, if you are hiking this as a day hike, no permit is required. However, remember you are only allowed to hike till Big Spring and then you will have to turn back. If you are planning on taking this on as a backpacking trip overnight, then yes, you will need a permit. How do I get to the Narrows hike? As mentioned earlier, you're going to hop on the Zion National Park shuttle until you get to the last stop. From there, it's a very short walk to get to the start of the Narrows hike. And don't follow the crowds, they'll take you to where you need to go. What should I wear while hiking the Narrows? Again, as discussed, knowing that water temperature and what time of year you are planning on hiking it can make a big difference, and whether you're going to invest in the full wetsuit neoprene booty combo. However, there's some items I recommend you bring with you no matter what time of year. I'm going to read out a list. I would definitely recommend waterproof shoes like Chacos, neoprene booties, or trail runners, hiking poles or a walking stick to help you keep your balance, quick drying pants and shirts so once you get out of the water you're not freezing back on the shuttle ride back, bag you're okay with getting wet, either a dry bag or a day pack that has some waterproof coating, and a waterproof camera or making sure that your phone is waterproof. How busy is the Narrows hike? I would say that this is by far maybe the busiest hike in the park. This means that you're going to be sharing it with a lot of people no matter what time of year you're planning on doing it, and it can get a little bit busy. I do want to mention that this hike is usually closed from March until May, so if you are planning on visiting Zion during spring break, know that the Narrows probably won't be an option for you. Is the Narrows a good hike for kids? I would definitely say depending on the age of your kids. We saw some young kids while doing this hike, and to be honest, they did not look like they were having a ton of fun. The water is very cold. And depending on what time of year you are hiking, it can be very high. To be honest, like if I were a young kid, I'd be pretty freaked out. Older kids, I would say 8 and up should not have a problem, though make sure that they are equipped with the right gear as well, including a walking stick. You don't want to be worried over your kid falling over while you're worried about you falling over at the same time. I hope this has helped you plan your Narrows hike as a day hike. If you have any questions about the experience, feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button and the bell notification before you leave, you'll get more updates on national parks and tips to help you plan your trip of a lifetime.